Just leave it for now.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the last transmission. A bit of a special show tonight, interactive, with 4 of us on the show tonight. So we've got obviously Paul. Paul's always here, and we're joined by Linny and Mick Mclaren tonight. So, guys, questions in capitals. You already know all this. Jess is going to be moderating tonight for us, so thanks, Jess, for that. How you doing, Paul? All right?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Yeah, had a great week, so yeah, all good, and just looking forward to. And I think we're finishing a little bit earlier tonight, are we? Is it 8:45?
Yeah, 8:45. Yeah,
Excellent. So just be aware of that, guys, when it does just kind of shut off. And I'll look at comments here, and before we get kicked off, shall we just have a look who's in chat? I mean, I can't see a number here, but we've got. I'm sure that's a little bit. Kiss My Axe, Zeno. Jojo, Stargazer, Steve Tees, Karen Bierman, Rob Shift, Blue Shift, Rivington Pipe Beast. Let's have a look. I'm just running out of names now. I think Mrs. Linney will be watching this. Declan Walsh, Tonya Morrison, Mia Girl will be in, I expect. Olgie, Awake. I'm going to stop people. Maybe somebody else wants to shout a few names out further down. Twitchy Curtains there. Dragonborn. I've got to stop. I say every week, don't I? I've got to stop. So welcome, and we value your support. As Chris says, questions in capitals, and Jess will fire them at us as we go through this bit of an interactive. Where do you want to start?
So we'll start just introduce Linny. Linny, have you been, Linny? All right.
Yeah, I've been good, Chris. Yeah, I think it's first time I've been on here, isn't it?
So, it is, but it's not first time you've been up around these cliff tops and strange places, is it, Ian? You know?
No, I've been up and down there, as you know, for quite a long time now, and it is what it is, isn't it? So, yeah. Thank you for having me on here.
No, it's great, man. And it's obviously good to, I think Paul probably appreciates having someone to second his, everything that he says, because you're one of the guys up there experiencing it more than most these days, I suppose, as well.
That is important, that. And I think probably Mick values having other people there, going on podcasts and things, because I know you spend a bit of time with Chris. And it's good because if you're the mouthpiece going on a podcast and you're talking about things that, let me just pull that a bit closer. Sorry, guys. You're talking about things that sound a little bit, absolutely, it's all way out there. It don't make it any more true because Linny's going to back me up, but it just adds a little more credence to what you're talking about. We all know that because, you can't get a collection of people that are all just going to make stuff up for the sake of it. And there's some pretty strange things happening up there at the moment.
And you can't remember everything.
No.
You know what I mean? Because sometimes I'll be sitting in the background and you're talking about something, and I can remember some of that you haven't mentioned. That's that's fairly relevant. That's
absolutely
not every time, but a lot of the time, yeah.
No, it happens, and he'll drop it into chat. And I don't know whether this happens when you're on podcast, Mick, and it'll just flash up in chat. He'll say, "No, don't forget there were them 3, whatever, or 4, whatever." I know that's hypothetical, but I go, bloody hell, I forgot that. Yeah, so yeah, it's helpful.
What about you, Mick? Have you been?
Yeah, I've not been too bad. This week I've been a bit ill, actually. I've had some sort of stomach bug, but getting better now.
But you're out. You're the same as Paul and Linny. You're out pretty much all the time when you're not working, I suppose.
Yeah. Usually, like tonight, I would be out. But tonight I'm not going to go out. Like later on. But yeah, I'm out as much as I can be at weekends. I work 4 days a week, so unless something happens and somebody gets in touch with me and tells me they've come across something, then I'll go out then during the week.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, if you're working? You know, and I can appreciate a lot of people in chat will, you know, be holding down sort of 8 to 5 jobs, and sometimes you just don't have energy after grafting all week to go out. So it's good that we're putting time in and sharing these accounts and this strangeness. So,
yeah, just saying, when we were off air, we were talking about something that's happening up with you, and well, I don't know whether it's happening with Mick. We'll find out, but it's happening with yourself, Linny, and some of the other guys up there. We want to talk about the hitchhiker effect, don't we?
We do, yeah.
Let's kick us off and tell us what's been happening up there.
Well, it's been happening. It's probably been happening for as long as we've been going up there. But it almost seems, and I don't know whether, I mean, I'm throwing this at the three of you. It almost seems that the more you become aware of it, the more active it becomes. Unless you're sitting on something or getting really close to some kind of proof, then it just closes down on you. I don't know how that works, but we're noticing things happening at home. People might remember, excuse me, from even going back 2 years, talking about the little stones that were hitting the laminate in our hallway. And I started collecting them. But it just seems to be kicking off, and it's affecting other people who are coming up there as well. And I mean, we'll go to Ian in a moment, but have you experienced this as well, Mick?
You know, I've not actually, but we have a lot of things happening here anyway, because we're in a very old house. It's an old cottage that was built in the middle of the 1800s. So we have like little strange things happening. But when there are things happening up on WinterHill and I'm going out looking at certain things, then it seems to ramp up a little bit here with seeing shadows out the corner of my eye. You know, looks like somebody's walking outside past a window in the back garden where nobody else would go. You know, so there's things like that normally happen, but like I said, it does ramp up every so often.
What I find interesting is we're talking about this now, and imagine something might happen. I don't mean that we're creating it, but we're concentrating on it. But what's your views on this then, Ian? And I've sort of triggered it, and well, Chris has triggered it, and we've kicked this around.
Well, you have triggered it. I mean, we was talking earlier on before we came online, and then my screen changed, your screen, everybody's screen changed, and you asked Chris what he'd done, and Chris hadn't done anything. Yeah. And then it all went back to normal. I mean, I don't know how all this works, but it was like someone had just decided, well, I'm here in the background, I'll just press that button.
It was strange, because I take it that you could see 4 people on screen, could you, Chris?
Yeah, I could see 4 people on screen.
Well, us 3 just saw you.
I could only see you.
Well, you touched.
I could only see you, Chris.
Yeah, so
I didn't touch a thing.
So obviously we can attribute that to probably maybe just some kind of technical glitch, but there's a little bit more than technical glitches going off, and we'll not say who, but somebody came up to Cliff Tops with us on Wednesday, and I'm not saying who because they want to value. I don't know. They've got teenagers in house and they didn't want to frighten them. And as we'd been on about this hitchhiker effect and things that were happening in my home, in a little bit in Ian's home, and we'd been talking about it. And when we got in car and I drove this guy home, I said, "Do you know something?" I said, after we dropped you off, actually, Ian, weren't it? I said, "Strange thing is," I said, "whatever it is that's interacting with us, I think it can hear everything. We maybe don't even have to go to Cliff Tops. We maybe don't have to go to these locations once you've got that intermind connection." I said, "It's almost like I believe it's aware of everything we're doing, everything." And I said something to him like, I'd take note now if anything strange happens in the home. And once again, this guy's not prone to fantasy. He's only, how many times has he been up there with us, Ian?
I mean, he's been up in the past, but recently, I think that's the 3rd time that he's been up.
3rd time, yeah, and we'll do that in a moment. And 3rd time he's been up, and it's not somebody we've just met. I think Ian probably goes back 30 years with this guy, and I know I go back 20 over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we know he's pretty rock steady. And I got a text which I picked up the next morning and said something strange has happened. So I'll let Ian pick this up. What did he do, Ian?
I mean, I've known him over 30 years, and we did see earlier on in the night. Just keep a note if anything does happen, because things can happen. And obviously, when you dropped me off, you went through it all with him again. Anyway, I spoke to him at length yesterday after I'd left yours, and he explained that he's got he's up and down in the night time, let's say, and he goes to the toilet. So he's set up little sensors on his hallway. So when him and his wife or his kids or wherever get up, the light automatically comes on. He said he gets up, needed a pee, goes along the hallway, the light didn't come on. And he says he was halfway along the hallway, no light on. He said, that's a bit odd, it doesn't do that. And then he said he felt proper frightened. He said, I haven't been frightened in this house before. What do? Do I run back to my bedroom? Do I run to the toilet? And he was rational, thought, well, I need the toilet. So he ran to the toilet, run in the toilet, turned the light on, did what he had to do, built the courage to come back out. And when he came back out, the sensor worked and the light came on. So he went back to bed, laid there thinking about it. And then one of his children sent him a text saying, Dad, what's rattling at my door, knocking on my door? So he said, well, whatever, just fobbed her off. And then I asked him, I says, well, did she mention it to you in the morning? And he says, no. I says, well, just let it run. And if she asks you and mentions it again, just say, well, the sensor wasn't working and it was you walking up and down. I mean, there's not a lot of woodworking some kids, is there? But no, it's not fair to frighten someone that don't need to be frightened.
They don't need to be. And what he did, he actually sent me the text and the time and everything. So this text did get sent to him. Where you're not. Yeah. So are we talking about something that's interacting from up there? It might not be, but it's strange, isn't it? Just the same that we've all been up there, we're all. I got told Ian today. I got woke up last night. Somebody checking me. or that's what I did. I've told people before, at the moment I'm in spare room because my back's still hurting and I just want to be as comfortable as I can. But Mary hates it, but I let little dog sleep in it on a blanket on the floor. And I thought it had jumped on bed. And I got it off because she'd gone mad. But it weren't on. It was just fast asleep when I put light on. So that were odd in itself. But, I mean, there'll be people, no doubt, listening to this afterwards thinking, oh, you guys have got overactive imaginations. No, we haven't. There's a reality to this.
It don't just interfere with you as the person. It's seeming to interact and interfere with people that's close to you, other family members or other people that you've talked to. All of a sudden, start saying, "Well, since you told me that story, this has happened." Yeah, people might say it's an imaginary act. Imagination. Yeah. But when things are physically disappear and physically moved and reappear, there's got to be more to it than that. You could run away with yourself and it could really turn your head inside out and start to worry about it. I mean, some of the things that has happened, yeah, it is concerning and it is worrying, but I think the more that you give it sort of like accept it's there, the more it seems to come across to you. But you could literally, I think you could really frighten yourself, where you could just crawl in a door and close the door behind you and not want to come out.
Yeah, you could take hold. What are your views, Mick? Chris?
I was just going to say, like last weekend, it just came to me and I completely forgot all about it. But Carol Ann, she was using the toilet last weekend and there was a knocking around the window. So we were unsure of what that could have been. Because we're on, like our bathroom window, it's on a second floor, and it was as though someone were outside just knocking around, around the window. So, you know, like things do happen, but sometimes you don't take notice of them as much.
Yeah.
So that's a prime example, is that, Mick? Because earlier on, Paul, he asked you, have you had anything? And you was like, no, but now we've mentioned that. That's just it's just dropped back into your memory. Otherwise, you'd have probably just forgotten about that.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, Mick, I don't know whether you want to answer this. Lee Roscoe's saying, your partner in crime, he's saying, Mick, talk about the true account about the following hitchhiker effect feeling we brought back to the caravan at Bempton.
That was an unusual one because we'd had that experience at Bempton where these what looked like eyes were following us around, and there was some sort of energy around there that was following us back from where we saw. Well, I didn't see anything, but it was Lee and the others who saw it because I was using the psionics, and you know what it's like when you move that away from your eye, you can't see proper. But when we got back to the caravan after we had this experience, we had a feeling that there was something circling around the outside of the caravan. The feeling we had at the cliffs, it disappeared. But when we got back and we were stood there just looking at one another and talking about what had happened, we just got that sense again as though this thing was around us again. We actually went outside to have a look, me and Lee, and walk down the caravan site a little bit. And we could hear what sounded like little pebbles moving around as though something were walking about, but there was nothing there at all. And we got back pretty late that night, so there were no one else walking around. And it was almost out of season, so, you know, there was hardly anyone around the caravan site then.
Do you guys think that it's a strange one, really, because I was just reading Rob's comment, Blue Shift comment. Rob was saying don't interact with this thing, but it's a weird one, that, because where do you guys stand on in the sense that we are almost actually
trying to initiate?
We're trying to initiate it. We're trying to not antagonize it, but we're looking for an interaction. So do you think that we are? I mean, I think that we are potentially, whoever, Bempton more so, but I think you are at risk if you're putting yourself in the way of these things. And a lot of researchers talk about a level of respect for the phenomena. You know, they say that about Rendlesham. You know, Derek Savery, God bless him, he used to say that all the time, didn't he, about Rendlesham? You can't just wander into the particular parts of Rendlesham Forest and demand interaction because you'll get more than you bargained for. And I suspect it's the same in a lot of these places. What do you guys think?
I would agree. I've spent time in Rendlesham Forest with Derek. And like you said, God bless him, we're an absolutely diamond, a lovely fella. But he talked about the apports, the stones dropping from the air, the hot stones, and they'd found. And Brenda Butler, I spent a bit of time with Brenda as well. And yeah, I think you've got to respect it. I think if you start being sort of blasé and I don't know, cocky with the phenomena, then it's not going to end good for you. And I'll stop in a moment, but this week I managed to interview one at Wilsthorpe, one of the Hunnaby witnesses at length, an hour and a half. He allowed me to film him, and he talked about getting cocky with the phenomena, asking it when the coins were falling from the air, asking it for money he could spend, asking it for the lottery numbers, and realizing that he's becoming too bold with it. He said, and I just turned around and it hit me in the head with a coin. He said, but it came at me like full circle and just smacked me straight in the head. And the other two have echoed his words. And it's almost teaching you a lesson, isn't it? You know,
do you think we should? Careful. Do you think we should be taking some form of protection up there? Many researchers do insist on doing that. Is it something you've looked into?
It isn't, no. And not saying that I shouldn't do. Do you know what I mean? But and I'm not saying, oh, I'm protected. But you know, I talked to Mark about it. Listen to me with my big mouth, guys. I talked to that guy about it, and
Mark Smith, was it Mark Smith?
Mark Smith, yeah, as you know,
not Mark Jones.
No, Mark Smith, and was it Jones? But I talked to Mark about it, and something happened. Do you know what I mean? It's something's definitely initiated and triggered, hasn't it? You know, but I mean, I don't know how deep any of us want to go into this, or whether you want to move on. I mean, Steve Collins says people who experience it need to protect themselves. And I noticed that Rob Blue Shift said it's contagious. There is a reason that Rob said this. I know the reason, but we can come back to it after someone else has had a little natter here in a moment, and I'll just tell you why. And Rob knows why. But give me a reason not to talk about it, Rob. If you don't want me to mention it, just say in chat or say give me a thumbs up.
It's definitely contagious. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be. As for the protection, I don't know. I mean, I spoke to a medium a long time ago, and he says, well, you shut it out. And I went, what do you mean? He said, well, you shut it out, don't you? And I went, what do you mean I shut it out? He says, well, you shut it out. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know how I shut it out. And he says, well, what I do, he said, I practice. He said, I practice that I go into a pretend sleeping bag and I zip it up and that keeps it out. And I was like, what's he on about type of thing? Do you know what I mean? I'm not talking a long time ago now. So he says that somehow I naturally shut it out. I don't know whether that's the case. I mean, we all go up there open-minded, but I'm not there asking to, inviting someone to come through us, let's say, as such. The thing that concerns me about it is, it has come home. There's no doubt about that in my mind. It has come home. Most of the time, I would say it was like mischievous tricks, messing about, like childish type of thing. Like we would be all that way, buggering about, messing about with people's tools and all the rest of it. But what concerns me is how it'll pass on to other family members, start teasing other family members in some way, shape or form, which I find, why is it, obviously there's a family connection there. Why is it doing that? Why isn't it just targeting me? It's me who's going up there. You're there with your eyes wide open, your ears wide open, but then you come home and then one of your daughters gets in touch with you and tells you this has happened. Your other daughter gets in touch with you and tells you this has happened. And then my mother, some of the things that's happened with my mother, I mean, things have happened to my mum well before. I mean, she told me a story today that's happened to her, 15 years before I was born. That happened to her. She said, I heard this, so I was listening, I just thought about that, and then I remembered this. And you think back, well, if it was happening then, is it a lineage that it's following and it just decides to come along, or is it everywhere that just something's just poking fun at us? And sometimes I think it is poking fun, because some of the things that happen are silly. It's not, some of it, as I have encountered things that have been very, very sinister, which I'm not really comfortable about talking about that at the moment. And it is me that's brought that up. Paul knows what I'm talking about, but it's just silly things. It's like, why that? Yeah, I mean, last week I had 3 pieces of toilet paper put on my foot while I was sat in the back room. 20 minutes earlier, I'd been talking to Paul about something that had been happening to him, and then I had 3 pieces of toilet paper placed on my foot. A few minutes before, I'd been raving about with a bloody dog in the back room, and the grandkids. They'd all gone home. I'm just laid out like a slob, and our lass says, "Why have you got toilet roll on your foot?" And I'm like, "What?" And I looked down, and it was over my foot, not underneath. 3 pieces of toilet roll over my foot. And it's like,
neat, yeah?
Oh, yeah. All in a line. 3 pieces. So the middle one was of the bridge of my foot. And it's like, the grandkids had been around and they'd had little tissues, because they've all been unwell with snotty noses and that lot. But it was a neat 3 pieces of toilet roll. So our lass actually took a picture of it. I had a look at the downstairs bathroom. It's the same toilet paper in there as the same toilet paper that's upstairs. It's our toilet paper, so it's come from this house. But, I mean, she took a picture of it. There's the dog's ball near my foot. where I've been, I mean, she's just over a year old. I've been throwing the ball around in the house, much to the annoyance to my wife. And I've been stood up and doing it, but it's when I was sat down, she just, why is that there? Why have you done that? And I'm like, what? What's that? None of us have seen it apart from my wife. We didn't see it appear. And it's just, I mean, to me, that's like tricks there, pranks there, having a laugh. It's not like it poked me in the eye or it did something nasty. You know what I mean? It was just a bit childish.
Well, it reminds me, I mean, obviously, when the obvious one to jump to, as with many things, put Bempton is the Skinwalker. So the situation with Skinwalker was very similar. The crew were taking it home, but then it got very sinister because the owners, I think, was it Bigelow, had serious like issues with his family, didn't he? Yeah. Like devastating impacts on some of his family. But I always think that, you know, you got to remember what they were doing. I can imagine that NIDS team and were doing all sorts of stuff that was antagonizing the phenomenon.
A lot of funding and a lot of digging and all sorts
of
on
the land, a lot of what you might consider very provocative behavior towards the phenomena, deliberately looking for a response. Whereas we tend not to do that. We kind of subconsciously, I think we're all thinking about it, and I think it knows that. That's why I think sometimes when you guys take new people up, it knows, it reads straight into it, and it performs in, you know, at various levels depending on who the individual is. So yeah, it's like you say. I mean, it's nevertheless. I wouldn't, to be honest, I wouldn't like it happening in my house. No matter how childish or trickster it seemed. It's like you say, you could get real paranoid with that.
Well, it's sort of telling you, isn't it, that it's keeping an eye on you, and it's showing you that it's keeping an eye on you as well. You know, and before, you know, like with the question about respect, you've got to respect when you go out there. You have got to respect these as other people around. You know, I tend to call them land spirits sometimes. You know, like, because I think that these things have been here. A lot of these things have been here a long time, and we're intruding on their land. So you've got to respect it like that.
Yeah, you make a good point. And I talked about the Fae. I think on Truth Proof, we touched on the Fae and my belief that the Fae could be responsible for a lot of what people are seeing and experiencing. And if we're to believe, when you look deep into the Fae and the folklore and the writings, that these things can shapeshift, and they're sort of tied to the land, kind of earthbound elemental type beings. And let's assume that there's some truth in this. And I think she got me thinking about it. Debbie, we had on a few weeks ago, and she said, my husband stopped, he wanted a wee, and in the woodland, and suddenly we heard something that we could only think could have been a gorilla breaking trees and smashing through the trees and making horrible sounds around us. Now, if you've got the ability to change form, and I know how crazy this must sound, people, but we've had so many cryptid reports where the people talk about limbs of trees being ripped in half, trees exploding, and then you walk into woodland and there's nothing happened. If something wanted you out of the woodland, they're not going to appear as Tinkerbell, are they? But if they've got the ability to appear as something else, even if it couldn't hurt you, even if all it could do was just pass through you, you'd run. You'd turn and run, wouldn't you? You'd leave the area. So maybe that's what's happening. I don't know, but I think we've just got to kick all these ideas about.
Yeah,
we've got the ancient people.
Sorry, Mick, carry on.
We've got the ancient people who used to around at WinterHill where we are. There's quite a lot of ancient sites, and we've got ancient villages where people would have been living around that at a certain time, and they would have had shamanic practitioners who were like their witch doctors sort of thing, and they would have been traveling into that other world using certain things like drums and sound and music to get to that different consciousness of thought. And sometimes, you know, they're probably bringing some sort of entity back with them, and using that entity of the land to help that tribe further the percent, you know, like further their outlook on life, sort of thing. And I think with the shamans, that, like I said, they would have been bringing certain entities round and make it almost like forkthorns and tulpas to guard around the areas, and especially where they have the burials, because we get a lot of sightings of strange things happening around burials, people seeing things like dogmen or werewolves, and I sometimes wonder whether these things are like the sort of guardians of the dead, and that's what a lot of people are seeing. And I do, like I think they sort of like they are mostly not the Old Norse. The word for them were landvetter or land whites, and they were doing the similar things. And again, we had them changing into wolves, like the berserker. When they went out into battle, they would put on a wolf skin and just go out into battle and just fight anyone who was around them. It sort of with the shaman, it will put them in a certain mindset where they would just go out and battle and fight, and that's how they would win the battles. So these shamans were quite important to these villages and to these ancient people, and they would then help the villages along in time and put the almost tulpas and thought forms around to help to protect that. Now, are these still stuck in the land? And that's what we're seeing as well.
No,
it's a respect thing. I think it's respect. It knows if you're respectful, if you're not, and if you're disrespectful or you take the mickey, then you reap what you sow, type of thing. I mean, I've always said it for a long time. I said, you might be sat next to King Kong, tickle his belly, and he likes it. You tickle his feet, he likes it. You stick a stick up his backside, he's gonna pull your head off, isn't he?
Mm.
And could that be the same type of thing? That it's just like, well, hang on a minute,
yeah,
you're asking for this. I've had enough of you. Let's have a little bit of this, and bites back at you.
And I know Mick talking about the burial mounds, and I can see John Paul Body saying, I agree, Mick, they are guardians. They're guardians, yeah, but I'm not necessarily of the burial mounds, in my opinion. Not that they're not seen around burial mounds. There's lots and lots of evidence to show that you've got a full spectrum of unexplained phenomena around burial mounds. But in the burial mounds, particularly East and North Yorkshire, there was a guy who excavated hundreds and hundreds of them in the late 1800s called Canon Greenwell, and a guy called Pitt Rivers. And he also did Danes Dyke, sections of Danes Dyke. That's why they realised it weren't built by the Danes. It was actually Neolithic because of the antlers and bone tools that they'd found. But where am I going with this? A lot of the burial mounds that were excavated, there were nobody interned in them. There were no bodies. So to me, it's the significance of the land. In some instances, Mick, Linny, Chris, not in all, but in some instances, there's something special about the reverence of the land, if you ask me. And maybe these people have had interaction. Maybe there's something special, these thin areas where things are coming through. Where, there's a particular area, and I'm sure you're going to have this at WinterHill, that's just a little bit more intense than other parts of the location. And we know there's a certain area up there at Bempton that seems to produce a little bit more of the strangeness than the outlying land. So I think in some instances, yeah, guardians of the dead, yeah, why not? We talk about Anubis being guardian of the dead, and the guardian that he used to lead the dead to the underworld. Well, allegedly, you led to underworld. That would if your heart weighed less than a feather, and I don't think anybody's did. But that was the story, weren't it? I think something like that. But I'm just thinking, if all these burial mounds, or a lot of them, a large percentage, had no bodies interned in them, then there's got to be another reason why we're seeing this phenomena here. And I think about ancient man. He'd have been struggling just to feed himself and survive, yet they invested man hours, thousands and thousands of man hours with primitive tools to build these earthworks. For what reason? It's almost like building an altar to something, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think this is a nice segue actually to get us into a bit of that of the dowsing, because I know I've not talked much about it, because I'm in the process of doing the documentary at the moment with a friend of mine called Ellis Taylor, he's on this sacred journey, but he's working with what he calls this many people would call it a dragon, so it's an energy line, but it's not like a ley line. It's almost like transient. And this particular one that's working with him is she refers to herself as the Holy Spirit, Bride, Saint Bride, Saint Bridget. And his whole purpose for 7 years, she has been taking him around sacred abbeys, that some that are still there, they're in ruin, some that that he is discovering with archaeologists on old farms, that places that they were never aware of. And this is all linked to the energy that the past civilizations were utilizing, some for very good purposes, which was the original purpose of the. That's the purpose of these energies. It's meant to be utilized and used, for good. But inevitably, you get these forces that would come along and they would build their castle on one of these spots, and then they would go to war, and these would be the civilizations that stayed in power for long periods of time, utilizing that energy for negative purposes. So I definitely, I think you're right. I think there's definitely a connection with energy somewhere. I think the burial mounds and the churches and the abbeys, all this came after this. That was the original pathways, or I don't know, patterns, or I don't know, locations of these hotspots. They're just being utilized by people that can tune into this, and some of us, like me, Mr. Insensitive, cannot. And I just can't. I do intend to start dowsing. I'm going out dowsing tomorrow. But what do you guys think? I mean, Mick, you're the dowser here. You say that there's a very strong ley line that runs from very near WinterHill to Bempton, don't you? Is that what you discovered?
No. Well, it goes over to Easington. Yeah, and it starts off around Southport, and it runs through around near WinterHill, through an area called Anglesark. And it runs straight through a burial mound there called Roundloaf. Now, Roundloaf has got so many layers going through it. Not only have I found some myself, but it's written about in other books about ley lines being around this particular point. It seems to be a central area around WinterHill where there's connections from that hill to other mounds. There's a couple of mounds on WinterHill itself called Noonhill, and the other one is slipping my mind at the moment. It runs through there. Now, along these certain lines, this is where things have been reported to myself of strange things happening. There's one where the area we're going looking at tomorrow in Roddlesworth, Tockles area, there's been a lot along that line, and we were there the other week, and we were just talking about certain things that were happening in there, like shadow people being seen, voices being heard, as though there's someone talking around people when there's nobody there. I've witnessed it myself. I've heard, me and Lee, like when we've been out there, we've been sat quietly and we've heard a voice, and it's along this line, and it's from here over to a place in Darwin called Darwin Tower, and it's there's not a mound or anything like that, but it's a point which it's got this like beacon placed, and you'll find that beacons have been placed in these areas where lines are running from one sacred place to another, and I think the ancients knew of these lines, and this is where they built some of their mounds without burying people in. I know we've got mounds with bones, and we've got mounds with urns where people have been burnt and buried, and then we've got like mounds that must have meant something to them at the time, but we don't know what. But I believe it's these energy lines. And you'll find a lot of the times when there's UFO sightings around WinterHill and on an area where the A675 runs through from Bolton going over to Blackburn, there's an area along there with a couple of lines going through. And one of the main lines called the Bellenus line, which runs from one end of the country to the other, runs straight through that area. and we get a lot. I get a lot of reportings of strange lights and craft moving along there.
Okay. So are you insinuating that they're using the energy lines as
I believe they're using the energy lines as well. Yeah, I think the energy grid of the Earth. Yeah, I think that is helping to move these objects around us, as well as things like beings that use these to sort of focus into our dimension, if it will, and then focus back out again.
Isn't there a major line runs straight up past Bempton though?
There is, yeah, there is. Mick might have looked on maps, but there's quite a few.
There is one going from Roslin Chapel that I believe goes down to around Danes Dyke.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you what, as we will eventually, I hope, and I know if you're listening to this, Brenda, we want to get Brenda Butler on, but obviously we might not get the maps, Brenda, and it's your choice. But I know that there's some maps that exist that a certain David Daniels did. The maps exist, the ordinary maps of Rendlesham and Bempton and other areas, but he put specific markers on the maps when he spent time at Rendlesham with Brenda, and Derek Savory and myself went through these maps, and some of the lines pass through Bempton and Flamborough. It's interesting, you know. And anybody who doesn't know David Daniels was or potentially was, there's a lot of people think that man were an alien. And
that's a brilliant story. That
it really is, and he lived with Brenda for a while, a short time, you know, just stayed there while he was visiting the area. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think I'm right. Lord Hill Norton requested to meet him as a private meeting, and I know that happened. You know, Admiral at Fleet, Lord Hill Norton, and I believe he said one day, there's going to be people coming looking for me. So I'm not going to be around much longer. Don't quote me word for word. It could have been totally different, but worse to that effect. And he'd just gone. But people did come asking about him, you know, from officialdom, but he'd just gone.
He disappeared, didn't he?
He just,
completely.
Sorry?
He disappeared one day. Just that was it.
Just disappeared. And interesting things that happened. They said that they'd be walking in Rendlesham Forest with him, and he'd be behind them, and they'd look behind them, and he's not there. And when they turned forward, he's in front of them. All sorts of strange things. There's other things that it wouldn't be fair to say. I think it's the stuff that Brenda, if she were willing to share, would be better sharing. And I'd love to get Brenda on here and talk with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And John Hanson's got a handle on a bit of this stuff as well. So that will be good. I'm sorry, Rob, because we've not mentioned the Contagion, and we might get to it, but I'll just let other people have a natter here.
No, well, we can stick some. Jess, do you want to stick some questions up for us? There's quite a few in there by the looks of it, so we can get rid of a few of them if you like.
Karen Bierman, I wonder how much of our lives are affected by what we don't see and realise is there, but it causes havoc at certain points throughout our lives. That may be this other acting out, that may be this other acting out. Do you know, a lot of it, Karen, in my opinion, could be hidden in plain sight, and you know, we're picking up on this hitchhiker effect, and the little subtle things might be happening in everybody's homes. I'm not saying they are, but we just override it. We don't know.
Yeah, we're totally detached from it. Modern life is you know, we're about as far away from those shamanic type villages that you can get, aren't we? I suppose.
Absolutely.
The amount of, I don't know, just Wi-Fi, that kind of modern tech, all this stuff that's not very good for us at all. I believe that interferes with it as well. So yeah, we are completely out of touch, absolutely. And you know, even some of us, like myself included, in the subject that knows very well that I should be a little bit more in tune with it and should practice consciousness and meditation more. You just never do. You plan to, but I don't know about you guys. I just never. When I do it, it's amazing. When I've finished doing it, I think, yeah, I'm going to do that again. But I just never seem to get into the routine of doing it for some reason, which is crazy, really.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah,
I
think it's everywhere. It's everywhere. and we just don't. You just if you open your eyes, you'll see it.
Mm.
And I think it's only something like the things that's really, to some people, that's really in the face and really obvious that it becomes obvious and they see it. But if you open your eyes, things are happening. I personally believe things are happening all the time to us, to everybody, all the time. It's just you don't see it, you don't notice it, you get on with whatever you're doing, and that's it.
Yeah, life takes over,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
I think Linny's right there. It's all around us all the time. But if people choose not to notice it, then it doesn't happen to them. But like us, we're involved in it. Apart from Chris not having any experience, but we sort of like it's there and it's taking notice of what we're doing, and it's poking us all the time and showing us that it's around.
Yeah.
Apart from Chris.
Yeah, and self-sufficiency enthusiast. Evening, guys. I'm up at Danes Dyke tonight. Last chance for 3 weeks because going to the Alps. Lucky you. So it'll not be 3 weeks until you're back in Brid. Well, I'll not be at Danes Dyke, but one of my daughters I've not seen for a couple of years is here tonight, and she's here with a partner. And I'm finished when I've done here. I'm the one to go up there. And this is the one that saw the square of white light on the hillside and came home and experienced the growl. And she's got about as she wants to go because of that, because she's got about as much interest in unexplained phenomena as somebody sat watching Coronation Street. I'm not saying that, you know what I mean? All I'm saying is that's piqued her interest, and she's going to come up there tonight. We'll just have it a couple of hours, no more.
Cool. Zeno, there's a theory fairground rides are secretly used to harness loose fear energy. What are your opinions that we're building these entities the more people think about it? Or is it all just, or is it all Project Blue Book, or Blue Beam?
I don't know. How far could we take that? You know, you could say anything that gives you a thrill, right? Like roller coasters, Alton Towers, anything. You know, going to a zoo and some animal coming charging at you up close and personal at glass. I don't know how far we'd go with it, Zeno, before we started thinking everything. I know what you're saying, but I don't know as they build fairground rides just to harness fear and energy. I'm not sure.
I've heard it about events and particular large scale events. I've heard that's a similar. The loosh is. Can't remember who came out with that term first. Zeno, if you know, just put that in the chat for us, will you? Someone coined that term, didn't they? Loosh. I'm sure it's tied into the reptilian thing. That's where I came across it years back.
And I'm on board with Zeno. If you're saying then that the fairgrounds, the big events like Chris has just said, they're not responsible for it, but there's people in the know that can harness that fear and that excited energy. Then I can understand that. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it's a good concept. Anybody got any views? Mick, Ian?
Well, I'm just thinking, like again with thought forms, are we thinking, bringing these things to us and bringing these things to life, because there's a lot of people interested and there are a lot of people are talking about it, and it's becoming more and more. There's more and more things happening at the moment. Is that because there's more and more people thinking about these things being around us? And that's why they're showing themselves even more. Or people are seeing things more and more these days because it's our thoughts that are bringing them along.
Yeah, power of the mind. I think you're right.
I think the fear thing is different. I mean, let's say, for instance, you go for a walk in the woods and you're happy as Larry, you've had a real nice time. How often do you come home and say, I really enjoyed myself today? I felt really happy. It just pass over your head. But if you said, I went walking in the woods and I absolutely was petrified, what was that? You don't forget that. No. And you talk about it. Well, some people talk about it. So why is it the fear? What is it getting out of this fear? Yeah, I mean, we know of people and as myself and as you, Paul, you go out, yeah, you have a good, I mean, you're feeling happy, and then you're frightened to death.
It's all right.
Is that similar thing? You go on a fairground ride. Some people say, no chance, not going on that ever again. I absolutely SH myself. No, that ain't happening. Other people love it. But a little walk in the woods, walk in the dark and whatever, and then you frighten yourself, you don't want to go there again. So there's some that, I think there is the potential for that something does feed off the fear, not love and light, but it frightens you. It gets you, whether it pulls your negative energy from you or it gets a kick out of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think like Zeno's saying, it is. Yeah, it's a Gnostic terminology, and I think look, there's definitely something to that because, and I think vice versa, it would work the same. I think when you have the opposite of that, you might get you have these perpetual choirs, don't you, that get themselves into and they sing perpetually for days, or they used to. I think there's some still doing it across the world at the moment, but they used to do that, and it must be a very similar thing. They're communicating with a certain part of the phenomena to I don't know, for whatever reason, I assume for positive purposes, but equally so, like you said, these events that are orchestrated that generate that very well. Fear is a very low vibration type of energy, isn't it? So I think, like you've said, it's obviously going to be a certain type of being or entity or energy that resonates with that needs that. So and also the illusion, I think if you can create that fear from the reptilian research, is that if you can put someone in that state, that you are opening a doorway there for attachment. That's what I kept constantly getting contacted by people, that once you've been put into that terrified state, not everybody, but with certain people, you are opening yourself up to negative things.
Hence the need, as I don't know, mentioned it earlier, protection. And people are talking about protection because, anything, shamanic drumming, singing bowls, you're connecting potentially with the unknown other. Meditation, ayahuasca. You're trying to connect with something, and maybe we don't know what it. Well, we don't know what it is, and sometimes you might have an adverse effect or an absolutely positive one. I think most people would want the positive, but it doesn't always happen like that. So whoever mentioned protection earlier, and I said, well, I've never really done that, but maybe that's something that really should be taken very seriously.
Well, the mediums take it very serious, don't they? They absolutely insist on it. Like you've heard Nick Kyle. You've had Nick Kyle on the show, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Him and his wife absolutely insist on it, and they were doing what's it called, the skull, when they were doing the skull experiments.
The skull experiment, yeah,
and all those sort of seance stuff. So there's obviously something in it, like you say, even if it's just a psychological trick, like Lenny said earlier about just, I don't know, zipping yourself in that bag, or a lot of people use that golden. If they imagine and visualize a golden ball of light that they're inside. I think it's just a state of mind. I think.
Well, a lot of people carry things, don't they? I carry something myself and use for protection, because when I feel that I've got it on me, I feel safe, and I sort of like think, if that's on me, then it'll help me with anything negative coming towards me, and touch wood, I've not had anything too negative coming towards me.
So how much then of that, Mick, is the power of what's in here, and that tool that you've got, whatever you're carrying, be it a stone or a cross, whatever, it might hold no power, but it's
I think the power's up here.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah, definitely the power's up here, and I think it's ourselves that can keep that negativity away.
Yeah. Always use the Ouija board, me as an example. We don't use them. Ian won't use one. I don't want to use one. But what I'm saying is, it's not. Well, no. But what I'm meaning is, it'll be something that's carved and lettered, or something that's just a cardboard board. It holds no magical properties. It's the input, the mental input from the people involved. So it could just be a piece of A4 with letters on it. I think we all, myself included, underestimate just what the power of what we can actually achieve with our own minds, and the thought forms, the tulpas, lots of things. Yeah.
And I think the entities out there that know this can use this against us, and almost like a parasite working with us. And these entities are doing what they're doing and showing themselves when they show themselves. There's a lot to do with that. That's why we see things the way they want us to perceive things.
We've been shaken while asleep, but wasn't an actual negative act, not an attack. So, and I'm assuming, Adam, that that's how it's made you feel. And I know there's only you in a position to know that you didn't feel no fear. So yeah, some of these things, when you gain a physical kind of contact, it's not forced to be an attack, is it? Yeah, a good point. Right, Paul, you can mention me getting hitchhiked. Well, I'll tell you what, Rob, we need to have you on for 20 minutes, half an hour, one Sunday, because you'll do a better job than me. But I'll just cover this as best I can, and so don't blame me if I don't get it all right. But you've been up to Bempton, you'd been on your motorbike, and I know that you absolutely ripped the heart out of the motorbike with the speeds that you go on it. Regardless, that's all part of it. You'd been to Bempton, you'd had some kind of negative experience whilst up there around the old RAF base. On the way back, you're pursued by a van that's going at insane speeds because you're on this bike, and I know it shouldn't have been able to catch you, but it did. But I need to refresh myself with the details of that, Rob. That's why I said you'd be better than me. But what's interesting is when you got home and you're in your property, there's bangs on your wall. There's a little girl giggling in the hallway of your home. You can hear all this. You're getting an image of some horrible, grotesque face placed into your mind. You're not thinking about it. This is what you've told me. But you're getting this image placed into your mind. What's interesting is you've got a couple of friends, female friends that you know, who you'd spoken to and everything. One of them out of the blue says, I'm getting this horrible image coming into my mind. And she described the face that you were describing to me, and you'd not told her. And so the hitchhiker effect, the contagious effect, it's a knock-on, just like Linny said earlier, and I know Mick will think same, and maybe Chris, I think that it spreads to members of your family and close friends inadvertently, because I'm pretty sure Rob didn't mention these strange happenings to his two friends, yet it affected them as well. So we've just skimmed it, Rob, so you'll do a better job. Come on one time. You don't have to go on camera if you don't want to, and share it with us, because it's a great account, especially the motorbike and the people travelling home.
That wasn't a love and light one, neither was it?
No, it were definitely not.
A love and light experience. That was a
horrific.
That potentially put someone off going there again, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, and there's not nice experiences at home as well.
And he might be a lovely bloke with great intentions, but he's gone up there and someone's decided whatever it is to be, have a play with him and not be very nice to him at all.
Yes, Paul, go for it. So yeah, we'll do that, Rob. I hope so. So Deb Shaw's question, you gonna read it, Chris?
Yeah. Do any of you get a vibe before you go out? Like you can tell if you're going to experience something.
I have myself. I've felt that myself. It's like a sort of like an excitement before going out. It's sort of a feeling that something is going to happen, but you don't know what. And then we've had a few things happening, not big things, but things have happened. Like things being thrown at us, or noises, or voices even. But we've known before going out.
I've had the complete opposite of that. A lot of time when I've been at Paul's, certainly the first couple of times I went up there, I don't know whether it was just wishful thinking, but I had a really strong vibe. And I think we've said it, Paul, we'd be on our way and we'd say to each other, we've got a feeling something's going to happen tonight.
Something's going to happen, yeah.
Yeah, and it never bloody, I mean, it did, but on those couple of occasions, particularly that night when we were out in that field, when we were sat in that field, remember when we were doing the first dock, I was sat there thinking something big's going to happen here, and it just, I mean, it was a lovely evening anyway, summer evening, and we just sat out. It was great, but nothing happened. I was so certain it would.
We sat all night in a field, and we'll not say the M word, but where for at least 2 years there'd been a lot of sheep fatalities on a regular basis, and deer, and badger, and fox, and strange things seen, and we spent the full night there, sat. To be honest with you, it was a lovely night. Didn't even need a fire, but nothing happened. But it's fascinating, and I know sometimes. I mean, Linny will back me up on this. We were up there Wednesday night. It felt flat, didn't it?
I still can't get my head over Wednesday night. I came home My wife she'd only just gone to bed when we came home, and I was pacing about, and I said, she said, "What's the matter?" I said, "Don't know." So I can't put my finger on it. I went to bed. The next day when I woke up, it was still the same. And I came down to yours a bit later on, and I asked you, I said, "How did you feel last night?" And how you was feeling was very similar to me. I still can't really put my finger on it. It was just, it was just a bit off, but not in an off way as in scary or supernatural. It just something was like I didn't. I mean, it might sound a bit creepy and whatever. 99% of the time, you can be up there and you're absolutely you come back, you're soaked, you're wet, you're freezing, but I've enjoyed the experience of being up there and having a good banter with the lads and all the rest of it. And only on a few occasions I felt a little bit cheesed off. And I felt cheesed off on Wednesday for what, you know what I mean? No one had cheesed me off or anything. I just felt a bit cheesed off.
You're right. I mean, I wandered off on my own, not because I fell out with anybody, and just sort of stood in the darkness on my own. And Ian never comes over to meet anybody in darkness. And in all time he's been up there with us. Usually we get pitched, we set the cameras up, we do what we're doing. I'll often wander off. Jeremy does, but I did this night, and I was away quite a bit. Next thing, looming out of darkness, Ian's come. Says, "How do you feel about tonight?" So he did. It's just weird, and you know, I know it's a bit sort of flat for you guys listening in chat, so we'll drop that one. But yeah, it were odd. It were odd.
Yeah, that's a great question. What do we think the hitchhikers are?
Do you know what? I'll go on, Mick, because you've probably got an idea on what your thoughts are on this.
Again, I think some sort of a spirit of the place, and I think it might attach to certain people who disrespect the area that they're in. Like you said before, you know, like someone is going over and peeing in the area. You can imagine someone coming to your garden or something and just, you know, having a pee in your garden and walking off. You'd be quite annoyed about it. And I think that's what's happening sometimes with these spirits of the land, these land vetter or land whites or whatever you want to call them. I think they're a bit peed off sometimes, and they'll come and do something at yours to upset you because you've upset them in their area.
I think personally, I think we're dealing with a bunch of different things here. I don't know whether it's all just one thing, just because there's so many extremes of it, isn't there? If you know what I mean. If you talk, just going back to the skinwalker one because it's the obvious one. If they've got the potential to do serious, basically end someone's life, make someone seriously ill, that kind of thing. I mean, that's some sort of power. That, I mean, I don't know. Is there a potential that there's something else going on? That there's technology involved in some of these cases? I don't know. I mean, Nathaniel would say then, well, would define technology. You know, he would probably say so. Yeah, it's frightening, as you say. Like Lynn said, the more you think about it, you don't want to think about it, because you can then start thinking, if I keep obsessing about this and overthinking it, am I gonna attract more of this stuff? So yeah, it's definitely a good time to be talking about this, because it's relevant, isn't it, for what we're all doing? It's just a nod to just say, hey, just bear it in mind, sort of thing. Worse for you guys, I think, actually, at Bempton.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure that it's all. I think Chris said there's a few more things going on. I'm not so sure it's all spirits of the land, Mick. You know, I mean, and I'm not saying in some instances it can't be. But
that's just a small example. Yeah, there is a lot more going on. Yeah, you're right. I'm just.
I mean, if it was spirits of the land, it's got a lot of intelligence, hasn't it? To be so deceitful, to be so secretive, to be so stealthy, to do everything. You know, everything that happens, we hardly ever get evidence of. We only know it's happened after the event, and that's not as daft as it sounds, you know. But it's only after the event that we realise, isn't it? We never get any warning usually that these things are going to happen, and there's particularly up around East Yorkshire. There's a few like almost they're not sinister, but the darker undertones to it. I think, Ian, you know, I don't see any light and fun with what's happening.
I can only speak for myself, but I'm pretty sure, and I know that you don't go up there with any disrespect.
No.
I don't go up there with any disrespect. And if there was people that was turning up there that was disrespectful, I'd be a little bit. I won't particularly want to be having anything to do with that at all. And I'm like, I speak my mind, and I'll be telling them, well, that ain't happening. You can sod off, type of thing. So I know 100%. I don't go up there being disrespectful. But some of the things that comes back at you, it's not being disrespectful to me or to us or to your family, but it is a bit. It can be sinister. It is a bit odd. Whether that's because it doesn't exactly know what it is, what's coming back, how to communicate with us,
and it may be trying to communicate. You know,
it might be, and that might be the only way that it can, is being that, because the nice thing now happens. It's nasty to you. It gets a reaction, and that's maybe why some of the things are nasty, because it's nasty to you and it gets a reaction from you. Maybe, I mean, who's to know what it is?
Well, yeah. Once again, we're only speculating, and my ideas on it might be totally off. But let's assume then that it is trying to communicate, and it doesn't understand us any more than. Common example: lift a stone on an ant's nest, and they look up at us, and they haven't got a clue what we are. And if he could feel the fear and the anxious energy coming from us. What if it's just reciprocating and giving us the same back, and doesn't even realise that it's affecting us in that way? Do you know what I don't know? And I think we could just go around in circles with this, because I don't think any of us do we really?
No, yeah. I mean, if you poked your finger in the ant's nest, what's going to happen? They're going to bite you. They're going to bite you, and some of them will run up your clothes and carry on biting you, and you'll run home. And that ant is, you know what I mean, a long way away from its nest, but it carries on biting you. So is that what happens here? Do we pick them up from there, and it just keeps having a nibble at you, and then eventually it disappears, or sometimes it don't, does it?
No, sometimes it don't.
Paul, you've had. We'll get off the subject in a second, but just to end it here with this one, but you obviously must have thought you've had a couple of illnesses that were really weird, you know.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I went through these with Jim Segala, you know, the scientist at Skinwalker, and there's more to follow up on that. You know, and I don't know where they came from. 2 bouts of cellulitis, you know, and did you see photographs, Chris?
Yeah, horrible, yeah.
Unbelievable. It just looked like I'd been beat up, all my face swollen up. Well, you know, when I went, first thing that the doctors and the nurses thought I'd been stung by bees. You know, it were absolutely terrible, and all gone. My skin had gone like a different color, like really, like purpley. It were horrible, absolutely horrible. And 2 bouts of that just started, and the little almost lesions that it started with are very similar to the lesions that they've been looking into at Skinwalker, where a few members of their team, I think they've had to drop out at Project, haven't they? I can't remember names of them, but I know they have. I know at least one of them's dropped out of the project because of illnesses, not unlike that. So I don't know where they came from. That's a worry.
Yeah, for sure.
What happened to Mark last week, Paul? The different Mark.
Oh, are we talking about
Bempton Mark?
Yeah. Go on.
Well, he went to Hull, didn't he? He was driving to Hull, and he said he started getting a really bad pain in his back.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and what happened to me? Where it come from? But yeah, go on, Ian.
Yeah, he got a really bad pain in his back, so he went to Hull, carried on with this horrible pain in his back, progressively getting worse. He got back to Brid. He went round the supermarket, and he said he had to sit down because he with the pain was so intense. He thought he was going to pass out. And he had it before. He says, well, I've had backache before, but nothing like that. He said it was horrendous. It really, and he struggled getting home, didn't he?
Yeah, and he don't know where it's come from, and it's gone.
And it's just gone.
You know. I mean, we could go down this sort of path and say, well, people do get ill. You know, so all we can say is that something strange is happening there. It's just we just need to. We can't actually pin what's responsible for it.
Did you look into getting one of them devices off, Jim, so that everyone, all you, Lenny and Pete and all those guys could?
I did, and it's not any more my fault than Jim's. We've not followed it up. I got ill, didn't I? I got ill just after Christmas with my back. Do you know what I mean? And that knocked me off my feet. Literally knocked me off my feet for ages, and that were no fun. And you've noticed a computer chair there. I can't sit on it. It's hurting back of my legs, the hamstrings to sit on it. Sorry, guys, you're thinking, Christ, it sounds like Paul's just talking about his ailments. But what I'm saying is it's still not right, you know. Come on, it's a weird question, Chris.
Yeah, well, interesting what Tanya's saying here about, and I've come across that in the subject, you know, when I've been working particular films or I'm working on certain projects, it's felt like there's been deliberate things put in my way, and everyone associated would be saying the same thing, but none of us were conversing about it. And it would only be, you know, when you met up a couple of years later, you'd go, you know, around that time I would this, that, and that, and everyone would be saying, yeah, that was happening here. So I think, yeah, I think these, whatever they are, these entities, these energies certainly can influence and do influence us every day. Not always in negative ways, but you know, sometimes I think they can steer you down certain paths. Like Nathaniel talks about that initiation process with the phenomena itself. You know, and it's interesting why it does that. What's the purpose of that? It's weird, isn't it? But like you said, there's always going to be more questions than there are answers in this subject. We know that. Rivington Pike Lee, what do you think if you are near a dolphin and you change your behavior, you can get fined? This is the only animal you can get fined for, but it is the nearest animal to talking. Yeah, I've heard. Is that actually true? That
I don't know. I don't know.
It's something about communicating with a dolphin. There is some sort of law against it.
Really?
I don't know whether it's an urban myth, that, but I've definitely come across that somewhere in what I've worked on over years. Question 2 to us. So why is this one? It could help us understand UFOs in the sea. Well, don't know. Well, it depends. The whole the dolphin thing is a subject in itself. I think there's probably some researchers out there that specialize in dolphins. There are many ufologists out there, not many, but there's a few ufologists that talk about the dolphins not being from this planet, and that similar to, I think they say the same about, is it squid or jellyfish, one or the other. There's something about those life forms and language that shouldn't be native. Again, it could just be a lot of speculation and urban myths entwined together.
Speak dolphin. I can't. Can you, Ian? I don't speak dolphin.
You can drink like one, though.
I can speak dolphin when I've had a drink.
Stephen Collin, I wonder if these burial mounds, etc., had been left alone, would there be any phenomenon to experience now? Good point.
I think there would. I think the phenomena, whatever it is, whether it's earth spirits, as Mick suggests, or whether it's just some other intelligence that resides there, whatever it is, it's there. And I think our interaction, and Stephen Collins knows this. I mean, me and Linny met him probably 4 weeks ago, and at the burial mound of Willie Howe. And you'll not mind me saying this, Stephen. I know you won't, because you know that's why we met you there, to talk about it. And Steve went to visit the burial mound. Whilst there, sat down on the mound on his own, poured himself a coffee. That's why he's in here now. He's never been in here before these experiences. Has poured himself a coffee, and then suddenly felt vibration and heard noise below him. And he's got the recording, which he sent me earlier this week, Stephen. Thank you, because he's got the recording on his phone and he didn't record it. It was there. So how does that work? He's got this weird recording. Sounds like some kind of heavy machinery being dragged. It's odd. Then we've got the guy in Danes Dyke who camped up there and heard the heavy. Where he described it, he said it like some kind of big heavy steel cranking, and or something like a bucket of a 360 or something being dragged along the floor, but next to him in woods. What's all that about?
I don't know whether you can remember, Paul, but when we met Steve up there, it was poking about sort of like on the mound, and his car was maybe 100 meters away from where he'd packed up.
The man
from the mound.
Mm.
He said prior to us getting there, he'd seen someone stood at the back of his car.
That's what I said. The man, the man.
Yeah, the man. Yeah, he'd seen someone stood at the back of his car, and he was like, "Where they come from?" And then
there was nobody there.
Then there was nobody there. Then we pulled up, and we looked about. After he told us, and there was nobody there. I mean, it is in the middle of nowhere, isn't it?
Mm.
So that was just always seemed a bit strange. I mean, it's middle of the daytime, wasn't it? And not the nicest of days, but just someone pop up down a little farm track and park at the side of the road, and then he said he definitely saw someone stood there at the back of his car.
Yeah, we went there a few months prior to meeting Steve, and I went there with Philip and Ron Kinsella, the burial mound of Willie Howe, and I think Ronnie's further down towards the car, and we're talking, and he said that, and it's not an echo chamber. How could it be? We're outside. And he said, "Oh my God, your voices are echoing. I can hear your voices twice, as though you're in a cave." And we didn't know it. We couldn't hear it, but he's insisting that that's what the voices were doing. Strange, you know. Once again, somebody's going to say, "Well, did you record it?" No, I didn't. Do you know what I mean? But it's just odd.
Dave Barker, all our cemeteries and churches, when we're lost in time, will they become areas of high strangeness and all connected? I think from my understanding, that the cemeteries and churches that are built on these energetic spots in the first place, I think it's just century after millennia, it's just and going back to the land as well. I think if you look at like the modern world and certainly like the industrial times and the mining, Jesus, the amount of mining and disturbance of the land that we've done and quarrying, if that is a way that is, if that evokes something or disturbs something, I think we're definitely guilty of that, and that's not going to stop anytime soon, is it?
No. Well,
I know, Paul. Sorry, Paul. I know you said earlier about we call them burial mounds, and you've said that they've excavated and they haven't really found anything in them. Would it be more like like a marker?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
And years ago, a lot of people, because there was a church that was built and it was only X amount of people that could be buried in the church grounds. The poor people sometimes would sneak in on a night time and bury the dead next to the church or in the churchyard. So it was in the consecrated ground. And no one was supposed to know that they'd done that, but the archaeologists have found burials against churches of people that was of no significance to the church, but there was buried there. So could people have, in past times, thought, well, it's a special place, and hence why there occasionally is burials around these areas?
And I would think so. And when you think about it, Ian, prior to the last 150 years, 200 years, there'll be bodies buried all over the place, everywhere. When people have passed away in more sort of, I don't know, darker times, more primitive times, before churchyards and worship to Christianity and other religions. And I know that Christianity and the religions go back a long time, but there'll be people buried all over the place, won't there? Could that be why we get random spirit apparitions and things? I don't know. It's all ideas to think about. Yeah. Alison. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Alison. I don't necessarily our eyes can only see. That's true. Your eyes can only see so much. That's absolutely true. I think that's another thing that we often overlook with this phenomenon. We don't, we're very limited in some respects as to what we see, out there. We're limited at night anyway. With our vision is just so poor. It's just incredible, isn't it? Which which makes you wonder whether we should be even out there at night. There's a lot of people would say that we shouldn't, not investigating this stuff anyway.
The technology is brilliant that's been developed now.
Yeah.
And point in question, Linny managed to obtain an incredible piece of footage using a thermal camera that we wouldn't have seen. It just wouldn't have been there, would it?
You wouldn't have had a clue. I mean, it still bugs me now that I didn't press record earlier when I first saw it. But I couldn't, I mean, I had the scope up to one eye and I was moving my face away trying to look. You couldn't see it with your naked eye. Pete was next to me. Them two ex-military guys was next to me. You couldn't see it. But when you look at the camera, it's there. I mean, 6 foot round or thereabouts, just
unmistakable.
200 meters away, spinning. We would have no chances. You wouldn't. You wouldn't have seen that at all.
And just before we end it, reason is not pressed record straight away is it was the very first night he'd had the camera out.
Yeah.
So you were trying to get your head around using the camera, weren't you?
That's one of the pet hate. You know what? Just briefly on the tech. That's one of my pet hates about these thermal cameras. That mine's the same. It's awkward to record on them. I don't know why they make it so awkward. I don't know whether I've used about 3 or 4 different ones, and I'm sure they could make it easier than It sounds like I'm being a bit of an arse here with the tech, but do you know what I mean? It's probably just because of what we're doing. If you're looking for wildlife and you're hunting or whatever, you probably don't need it to be instant. But with this phenomena,
you do.
This is the reason we get so much crap off the skeptics, is because, well, why didn't you get it? Well, sometimes the phenomena lasts a second. Well, it takes a long press on the thermals for it to even record. So by the time you've long pressed it, the phenomena's bloody gone.
Yeah, same with a trail camera. Sometimes they'll pick up something, but they have a 3-second delay, so you might not get what it's picked up. I get plenty like that where it's that 3-second delay, and then it's just nothing for about a minute of recording of nothing, but it's picked something up.
Well, just while you mentioned that, Tom Waters, if you're in chat, thank you for sending me those incredible trail cameras yesterday. That absolutely blown away when you sent me them yesterday. Really, really good trail cameras, and just came out of the blue. So, Tom, I appreciate it. I've already got some ideas for it, which I'll be running past Ian and the rest of the team, because these are good, really good trail cameras, and I were absolutely blown away. Thank you. And just while we're on with that, then let me just say that we'll be doing a live stream for the Truth Proof live stream on Sunday night. So tune in then at 7 o'clock, if you would, please. And over to you guys. Sorry about that.
Beware the moon, lads. Like that. Does the panel have a theory on what was behind the seal mutilations that occurred in various places in the early 2000s? They seem to have stopped or lessened in frequency. Well, I don't know. That's definitely one of your things, Paul, that, isn't it?
Yeah, the seal mutilations. Now, some of them, after talking, I don't know whether Ian's ever done this as well, but after talking to fishermen, Scarborough and in Bridlington, when you've got these spiral wounds that were on these carcasses, say that they've been hit boat propeller, because they actually know when they've had seals around back at boat and they've hit it and it's turned it. And there's others where you've got, and I don't even profess to know what it is that's underground where wind turbines are, but there's something spinning and it's sucking them in and throwing them out. But then there's others that are getting almost clean-cut, precise wounds that are totally different, which David Caton looked into in early 2000s. And a guy sent me some images late last year that Linda Moulton Howe were really interested in. And they were just like a cookie cutter. Did I show you images, Ian?
I have seen them. Yeah,
3-inch round. Sorry to sound so graphic, people. Just took holes out of these seals, and it were really, really. And I've not done out with images, if I'm being truthful. It's difficult because you can't really put them up on YouTube or anything because of constraints of showing things like that, because it's going to offend somebody, it's going to distress somebody. But they were really strange. So I don't think it's stopped, but I think some of it could be attributed to the seals being hit by boat propellers and seals being too close to whatever it is that's under the water where the wind turbines are. And I was told it's sucking them in and like literally throwing them back out, but it's spinning them and causing these spiral wounds. So not everything's necessarily unexplained phenomena.
I think the thing what you've done is right, is you have photographed them. You're not putting it out to the general public. You've documented it. The general public, they don't want to see it. Majority of people don't want to see things like that. It's not what you're about, but you've taken evidence of it for the future that can match up to something that maybe someone else sees. Yeah,
well, Linda Moulton Howe wanted to do a feature on it, and I sent her the images, and I said that I wanted, truth proof put on images. That's where the images had come from and everything. I never heard of else. What does that tell you?
Well, you can't help everybody, can you?
No.
You can't help everybody.
Going back a couple of years, I went on a regular ghost hunts at active locations. On one occasion, I came home emitting a lot of static. Things I picked up stuck to me, lasted about 3 days. Very weird. I've never, it's one of the things I've never done, ghost hunts. I've never been compelled to sort of do it, even though, it's incredibly popular, isn't it? You notice that YouTube's just lots of people are really into it.
Well, is it Fort Paul, close to where Les lives? Well, Ian knows Fort Paul, don't you? And there's a lot of spirit activity and ghost activity down there, and they do ghost hunts down there. And Nick Moore is now responsible for Fort Paul with another guy. They've got it. Nick used to do Nick's Exploration, and he's asked us to go down. He said we can go down one night and spend night down there. So we will be taking him up on that. Cool. So that could be interesting. But I wouldn't rule out, to be honest with you. What's your views on ghost hunts, Mick?
Well, we have a few around here where people can go to like the old houses, we've got an area just not far from here called Smithers Hall, and they're doing a ghost hunt in a couple of weeks. And I was thinking, I'll go along to that and see what it's like. And then I looked at the price of the ticket and thought, I'll leave that. £57 for 2 or 3 hours.
£57.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, the thing is, it's quite popular, and a lot of councils are taking this off in old houses where they're inviting like paranormal investigators to go around, but it's a charge that they're charging. When it's £57 per person, how much are they charging altogether? And they expect about 10 people to go along. So it's quite expensive, but
well, that might be, Mick, because if there's a council attachment to it, that's why it'd be £57. I mean, I think you should, if someone's giving up their time, it's like these teams, and people have talked to Paul about doing it up there. If someone's giving up their time, then they should be getting paid. But £57, I think I would suspect, out of my experience with the council, is that. So they're putting a bit of a fee on the side, though.
True. Now, I do go over there myself anyway, because like I say, I'm a 5 minute walk from where I am, and I go around the area every so often because there's so many things that have happened around there.
It's a renowned place.
Yeah. So, I've not caught anything out myself, but there are a lot of stories of people, seeing ghosts walking around. And actually feeling an electrical feeling around the area. So I'm wondering if it, like with the ghost and that, whether they're using some sort of electrical charge with the earth around them as a showing themselves.
What, to manifest?
To manifest, yeah.
Maybe.
And that's what she was picking up in 3 days of having that electrical. Static around her, it could be that's what's happened to her, being around that charge.
Maybe, yeah. Zombie Wolf, has there been anything strange around Speeton Church?
No, not that I know of, but on the cliff tops at Speeton, and
other than that bull.
Oh, that bloody bull! Yeah, that's close to Speeton Church. You want to cross the field when that bugger's in field, but no, and somebody might come and surprise us and say that they've got a story to tell. He said it's a very old church. It's always open. So if you're respectful, it's well worth a visit because there's some brilliant photographs on wall of old submarines that have washed up under Bempton cliffs during war, isn't there, Ian? And all sorts of things, wrecks and...
No, it's a lovely little place.
Mm.
I mean, me, you and Martin had a little wander around there one afternoon, and it was a lovely little place. Yeah, it's nice. It's just left alone, and it's a tight, nice little place. Well, I want to just briefly say about Mick was saying about these ghost walks and people going this, that, and the other. I mean, as a joiner and builder, we've renovated a lot of old properties, and one of these properties was there was a lot of activity. Let's say that lots of things was happening in there. And my sister and a current boyfriend at the time kept asking me about it, this, that, and the other. I had the keys to the building, so this particular night they were staying over at us. Says, "Can we go and have a look?" So we took them in. We had a walkabout and all the rest of it. And her ex-boyfriend was a bit of a, well, he was very much turned out he wasn't a very nice person, and he was clowning around a little bit in there. And I got a voice in my head saying, "I wish you lot are just off. It's not a effing circus." And I was like, "That's bad enough now. Come on, let's go." And it was like whatever was in there was telling me it's not a sideshow, it's not a circus. This is where we are. This is where we reside. So me personally thinking that if people start charging people to go on these ghost walks and ghost hunts and all the rest of it, fair enough, it's all ooh and all the rest of it. But you're dealing with something that has intelligence that it could potentially either just withdraw, not do anything, or it'll really take its anger out on somebody. You know what I mean? There's someone going to be clowning around, which it is going to be happening because a lot of people who go on ghost walks, they're not going to be sensible, are they?
No.
You know what I mean? That's how I feel, and that's from my own personal experience. What I got then, it's not and it was swearing at me. It's not an effing circus.
And Lenny also, I think, and similar to going up at people that go up at Bempton, if you out of a group of 20, you're definitely going to have a couple of vulnerable people in there, like, you know, mentally for whatever reasons, highly stressed or whatever.
Weaker,
they're vulnerable to that entity or whatever, to that energy, and it just doesn't, like all of us. Sometimes you can go in a place and just can't you? Even me, you can go in a place and just feel I don't like it here. No reason, no rhyme or reason. You just something about the place, and yeah, I think you're right. I think it could be potentially dangerous to be dicking about like that. Depending on where you go, and
yeah, you're right.
Some of these guys like provoking as well, don't they?
Yeah, dicking about. You shouldn't dick about. You've got to respect it. And if you dick about, if you turned up, like if I turned up in your front room, started poking about and being a prat, you won't particularly be very happy, would you? And that potentially is what people are doing when they're treading on, you know what I mean, in the footsteps of something else. And being totally disrespectful, it could turn, not very nice really quickly. Respect. I think a lot of it's got to be respected.
That's a good point. Yep.
You have to be respectful when you go into the woods. Why wouldn't you? It's just common courtesy. Yeah, it's a good point, Stephen. Yeah, it's just echoing what we said. Yeah, and for the most part, most people are. To be fair, most people that I know, they are, because I think they're well versed in what potentially can happen if you're not. So yeah, I would imagine it'd soon change their mind if something happened.
Absolutely.
Andy, certain spirits, energies shine a light to people they believe can help them. This is that's a good point, actually, Andy. Yeah, it's I've heard a few cases of that. I think Mick, you've dealt with a bit of something like that, haven't you, Mick? Some mediumship stuff.
Yeah. I've been to places where there were one in an area called Timberbottom, not far from where I am, and we went into this home because there was an autistic child that kept seeing and speaking to someone who was around, and we were asked to go in and have a look around the place. and we picked up that there was a man who used to live there before the house was when it was a farm, and he didn't like the idea of the house being there, but he would use it to spend time there. This is what he were communicating to us. And we were upstairs all talking at one point, and we got the idea that he was there because of the child, because the child could see him and sort of like sense and talk to him in his own way. And we ended up leaving, but leaving the person still there, because this spirit was happy to be where it were, and the young lad was happy that he could communicate with this being, and the family weren't bothered about it because nothing bad were happening. So as we decided this, and we were moving away from what was a young boy's bedroom, which he wasn't there at the time, he'd gone to a school, and as we were saying, we're going to leave this because I think everyone's quite happy. One of the toys, which didn't have batteries in, because we did go back in to see what it was, one of the toys that didn't have a battery in or wasn't connected to anything, turned itself on and started playing like this musical tune, and the lights on it was turning on and off. So, it's it's nice sometimes coming in there and finding things like that happening. And then there's other times where there's spirits that are there that are just happy with the people who've moved into their home. And I think, it comes down to respect, because this house we live in, we know we've got a few spirits here. And we sort of, they tolerate us, should I say. Because we just sort of like ignore them and let them get on with what they want to do. I mean, I've seen a child in the back bedroom running from one side of the room to the other in a pair of stripy pajamas, and because I was used to that, with being into mediumship, it didn't bother me, and I just said hello. And this child is a playful child, and when my daughter stays over sometimes, he'll shake the bed. Now my daughter's like me; she can pick up on things. And one night she said she was here, and it shook the bed, and she just turned around and said, "Oh, will you stop that, please?" And it stopped. So I mean, I think we can live with these when you understand what they are. But yeah, I've had quite a lot of experience with spirits and helping people with spiritual problems where they need to move on as well.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Anybody in chat notice anything tonight on anybody's rooms or anything? Just tell us if you did, and obviously anybody listening to this afterwards, just tell us if you did, because I think I noticed something at 102, and I wrote it down.
Oh, you wrote it down.
You see, I wrote 102 just there, but that's all I'll say, because I could have just imagined it. But anyway, leave that with you guys. Go on.
Okay. Well, you're kind of leaving the audience hanging there, but anyway. Okay.
Well, I am, because I'm not going to say because it could. I am, because it could be just imaginary. It were on my camera, so I sat back and I thought I saw something on this shoulder go up like a white light. And I probably just imagined it, and I just made a note and I put 102, and I was debating whether to say anything or whether to have a look back later myself before I open my big mouth.
No, you should say it, because, like you say, it's worth doing it. I've been on with you before a couple of years back, and something was behind me and came out at radiator in this room in a different angle. But so it's well worth mentioning.
So when I say 102, guys, it might be 101, it might be 103, but that I know I looked at up at the clock and it was 102-ish. Anyway, we've not got much time, so what we got there?
You were shopping years ago on your podcast, Paul.
Yeah.
You'd see a shadow go across the screen.
A few people had said it, and it's odd.
Just go like that and then back. Yeah, we often saw that. It was a bit odd.
Yeah, well,
Paul, I wonder if we should do some sort of live experiment or something.
Audience participating, concentrating, and see whether we could create some kind of light
Well, I don't know. We can have a good think about it, can't we? And see if we can come up with something.
Yeah. Anybody in chat got any ideas how to direct that? Fire it at us.
Here we are saying not to provoke and entice it.
But
Right,
we mean to do it respectfully.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So, I've read recently some areas have natural portals that remain open. Maybe that's what it is at Bempton and Cannock Chase, etc. Yeah. Well, Chris could tell us about the military guy. You don't have to go into detail, Chris, but what did he believe were up there? We spoke to the military guy for bringing down the light, and he went round that area with the camera. You do know they call him Alistair.
Yeah. You mean up at
Bempton?
Oh, up at Bempton. Sorry, mate. I with the Cannock Chase that threw me. I thought you were.
Yeah, well, he said Bempton in front of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, look, it's weird for us because we're so used to talking about Bempton, and it's weird because I wonder for the Americans and anyone that's not heard of it and that's not even a regular. Place? Yeah, where is this little tiny, and it is tiny, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
And obviously, you've said it many, many times. It's not just Bempton.
No,
it's it's up that coast, but there's an argument to be made against that. But we don't like highlighting some of these places, do we? So we'll not do that tonight. If you look into that, if people want to look into it and find out, then they can.
But
yeah,
I put
for sure.
Spot there, guys. Sorry about that, but we did interview this guy, former military guy who'd been allegedly said that he'd been employed to travel around the eastern North Yorkshire area, and in particular Bempton. And he said there were a portal in that area. You remember, Chris?
Yeah,
and he were former military. He showed us his credentials, and he'd been given. He described cameras he'd been given of the day, and the fast film he'd been given, which probably meant nothing to me. Well, it didn't, but Chris understood it, and he were looking for evidence of other intelligences, unknown others, and talking to people. He said he had a pass; he could get wherever he wanted, really, couldn't he?
Yeah, and also along with that, interestingly, one of his skill sets was dealing with a natural ability to deal with the occult, and his knowledge of the occult, not just his, but the lineage of his family as well, who were also military. So how many times have we heard that in connection with so many of these events,
I'm glad you remembered that now, Chris, because I thought I'd been talking to somebody else at first when I mentioned him. I thought
it was the Cannock thing. You know why with Cannock? I mean, look, I've been to Cannock many, many, many times. I think, look, I could be wrong. I'm not hating on Cannock Chase at all, because definitely stuff goes down there. But I think it's one of them places, that's got a lot of urban myths attached to it. And I think it's only in the last, I know, like a mate of mine, Ian, who researches that area a lot, and he knows a lot about the place. And I think he would agree. There's a lot of researchers from various fields, should we say, that have they've exaggerated and sort of built it up to be something. Now, Andy Records would say the opposite, because he's had a couple of experiences there. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's one of them places to me that's just, its reputation is a little bit inflated, personally, whereas places like WinterHill and Bempton's Beaton, no one even knows they exist, really, outside of our circle.
And do you know, Paper Trail shows it as well. The actual newspaper archives, when you dig into them through over decades and decades, just show the intensity of the strange phenomena there that people have reported. It's fascinating. I'm going to have to go, guys, in a few minutes. I'm sorry to say, but I don't know whether you're carrying it on.
No, well, guys, we'll whatever we could do, if you guys want to hang around. I know Mick's got a couple of accounts that he wouldn't mind reeling off. They're really interesting as well, actually. So,
okay. On that note, then, good night, Ian. Good night, Mick. Good night, Chris. And I'm away.
Right,
you might have to remove me from the show here, Chris.
All right, mate. Well, thanks for coming on again, and have fun.
Take care.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Good luck up there.
I will
Be
do.
safe. Take care, Paul.
Will do. Bye bye.
See you later.
Okay. Jess, if you want to shoot off, I can take over from here. You give me a thumbs up, I can see you. If you want to get off, and thanks so much for helping us out tonight, Jess. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Just disappearing for a second, Chris.
No worries. All right, Mick. So I spoke to you earlier when I highlighted some of them accounts on that you've been investigating. I'll tell you what, one of those accounts I think is an absolutely brilliant account is the one from Wigan. Can you talk about that for us?
The Wigan Flashes.
Wigan Flashes. It's a brilliant. I mean, there's actually 2 or 3. Actually,
yeah, there is 2 or 3 from there. Which one, or should I just?
Well, I think they're tied together. The UFO and the Bigfoot, which is for any Americans watching, you'll say a Bigfoot. What in a little Lancashire village like Wigan or Lancashire town?
Yeah.
Sorry. It's unheard of, but this is one of them. This is one of those occasions where the UFO and the cryptid are tied. So tell us all about that.
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll start off with the earliest one concerning Bigfoot, which was in the 90s, and this witness said he works at a place called CWS, I think it was called Rockwood Glassworks.
Oh, glass factory.
It shut down in the early 90s. I think it was 91. It shut down, but they had a railway system going into the place, and they brought in all the materials along the train track. Then that ended up closing, and they brought it through the roads, but. He worked in the 90s when it was more like, see, if you finish your work, rather than going home, you would, the people who worked there would go out for a walk around the Wigan Flashes, which is a big nature reserve. And where this train track used to come in, there used to be an hole where they could get through. So they'd finish the work and get up to there, and then they'd go for a walk, and it'd be between like midnight and 3, maybe 4 in the morning. And this one time he'd come out with a friend, and they'd go walking around the Wigan Flashes. They were walking down this area along this track, and they knew other people would do the same as well at night. They'd finish their work and go for a walk, and he thought they were being followed by a couple of friends who were trying to scare them. So they hid along this path, and then the next minute they heard someone coming closer to him, and when he looked up, he said he remembers it being a full moon as well, because it was lighting the place up. And he said he remembers seeing someone walking down, and it looked as though they had one of them old-fashioned cowboy jackets on, the ones where you lift the arm up and you see all them tassels hanging down.
Oh yeah.
And he said he looked up, and he sees this person walking towards him, and they've got their arms lifted up. And then this being started screaming. This not person, but it was something else. Started screaming in an high-pitched voice, and it went into I think he said it started off as a growl, and it went into a scream. And he was hiding there, and he said at that point, after it was all like in silhouette through the moonshine, but at that point, he felt so strange. He felt really weird. But just before this had actually happened, he said there was a feeling of everything going quiet around the area. Everything just went quiet. That what they call the Oz effect.
Yeah.
Where everything you sort of feels as though you're in a bubble. Just a bubble of energy, and this thing screams. And next minute, he said he's not crying, but his eyes are watering, and he can't see properly. This noise had affected him, almost like ultrasound, and shocked him and his friend. And his eyes were watering. As he was wiping his eyes and looked up, this thing had disappeared, and then everything started feeling back to normal again. But him and his friend wouldn't speak about it. They used to go night fishing around there as well, because there's quite a few ponds, and there's a canal that runs through it. And his friend, who was a bodybuilder and no nonsense, anyone like calling him or out like that, you'd sort him out. And he was about 7 foot tall. 7 foot tall. He was about 6'3", this fellow who he knew. And he said this thing, when he first saw it, it was about 7 foot. It would have towered his friend, not only in size, but in width as well. And that happened in 1997, I think he said that happened. Now, going from there and coming along many years, and we're talking about 2019, around that area, I got another report from who is now a friend now, as well. We contacted him past, and a friend on Facebook, and he were walking around that area on the other side of the canal, because it's quite a large area, this. It used to be, in fact, Lee, one of the team members, used to go to school right on the edge of here. And he said when he used to go home from school, it was all this flat land. Now, a lot of the mines underneath have collapsed, and it's become like mass, not lakes, but like great big areas of wetlands and ponds and lakes. And he was saying, like, when he used to like go on from school, there were nothing but like dry land going straight across. But now it's become a nature reserve. And this friend of mine, he's called Paul, and he goes around there every day and he feeds the birds. He's really into his nature. He takes a bag along with him, feeding the birds as he goes along. And he said this one day he were near a pond, and he said he heard this, like he heard like and felt this electric charge in the air, and he heard it as though it were moving above him. He said all the hairs on the back of his neck and all on his arms stood on end. And as this was happening, he said the area around him went dark, but when he looked up, he couldn't see anything. It was as though something was blotting out the sun, but he couldn't see what this something was. He could feel it. And this went over him. And he said after a while, it disappeared. Now, not only that, as he was going, he bumped into somebody else who he sees, because he goes out there a lot and he gets to know all the dog walkers. He said, well, this woman came running towards him, and she said at the time that she were walking along with a dog, and this she said there was someone walking behind her, and she turned around and it made her feel unnerving. And she were unsure, she thought a woman on her own, she better get out of there. And she saw this like ape-like creature coming towards her. Now, as she moved away and she turned around, she said she saw it, stood there, and then it moved back into the foliage. The foliage seemed to blend in with it, and it disappeared. And not only that, there was someone who was working at the school around the same time, said after he'd heard this account and me putting it out there, he were talking to Paul, and he would say he's a teacher from the school, and he says some woman had come running in one morning with the dogs, terrified, and said there was someone running around the flashes in a gorilla suit, and they actually got the police out with the helicopters searching around the area to see whether they could pick up anyone. Anyway, they packed up doing that after a bit because they couldn't find anything. But them are the strange, like almost Bigfoot accounts what have happened in that small space. And like you said, it's a big area, but it's got all these towns. All the town is around it, and then it's got a bit of like moorland going out. So yeah, that was in that area around the Wigan flashes.
And it's not a million miles away from WinterHill at all.
No, you I'd say Wigan, 20 miles away, and then this area. You know, it's along that corridor. You got this area. Where Wigan is, you've got the canal going through. Now, on either side, you've got all the wooded land going through. You have a few residential areas, but it stretches through along that corridor and then gets around to where WinterHill is. So there is a connection going along there of a green belt that goes along there into Wigan and beyond Wigan as well, going towards I would say Southport area and that way over.
Yeah, I mean the whole British Bigfoot thing in general is just a very weird subject to research, isn't it? It's just a bizarre one. But, I was going to ask Linny. I'm going to mention it to Paul as well about. Have you guys thought about moving sort of operations a little bit, Linny? You know, just sort of varying the location that you go to up there.
Yeah,
along the coast.
Yeah, we only spoke to Paul about it the other day when he was deep in thought, when he was like, he just wandered off, and I spoke to him. I mean, while he was suffering worse with his leg and his back, we did go to different areas where we could literally just park the car up at the side of the road, get out, spend 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it was, then get back in the car and move. So most of the time we was, you know what I mean, within touching distance of the car or the van or whatever we went in. And we did do that quite a few times, and we had, you know, various, we saw a few odd little things. But harking back to doing that, that's like looking for visual things, let's say. Whereas at Bempton itself, it's, I believe, and Paul's, I think he's on the same wavelength as me, is it's changed. It's, you're not looking up over the sea and into the sky. You're now looking around you.
Yeah.
And close to you. That it's something that seems to, it's like it's something else. I mean, what you see in the sky, I personally believe what we've seen in the sky and over the sea and sometimes under the sea is potentially something totally different to what's lurking around there. I think, personally, what's around that area has been there a long, long, long time, and it just takes advantage of people who's in that area. And it seems to pick on certain people and certain individuals and takes advantage of you. I don't really know how to explain it really that way, because we'd set off before and it was absolutely thick fog, and it'd be like, well, we're not going to see now. What's the point? So we didn't go. And then we had people that was visiting. It's a shame because they've come a long way. So they're here, you know, they've paid for accommodation in the area. Let's go up there, you know, like Carl and Sarah. We'll go there because they've come. And then you'd start seeing things. You'd see stuff, flashes of light. There'd be interactions in the fog. I mean, some of that fog was really, really bad. It was like it for days on end, if not weeks. Really bad and thick fog, and you'd see stuff really close quarters, and we all saw it. Everybody at them particular times, everybody apart from my wife who came with us. And then a few weeks later, the fog was back, and there were some other people up there. Apologies if I can't remember exactly. I can remember your faces, but who your names was. And then my wife did see things up there, as well as, you know, nearly everybody else in the team. And prior to that, occasionally we have gone to Speeton, and we'd spent a bit of time at Speeton. I mean, it is a trek because you go along a little track through some woods, round a corner, across a field with cattle and bulls and all the rest of it in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it is a trek. And unfortunately, you know, like Pete is, you know, he's recovering from major heart surgery, and Paul's not been in, you know, I've got a dodgy knee and a broken ankle and all the rest of it. But you persevere. And yeah, we have altered our tracks a little bit. And like Jeremy, who comes up there occasionally, well, it's not occasionally, he comes up with us on a regular basis. What I was going to say is occasionally we have gone elsewhere, and Jeremy's saying to us, there's a certain area, which I'm not going to say because we don't want people all jumping in up and down and turning up in it. Should we spend a few hours in this particular woodland? Because there's been things happening in that woodland. Yeah, we're all up for doing that, and just seeing if we can catch any evidence of something. I mean, it's okay us saying I felt this, I felt that, I've seen this, I've felt that. It's only us saying that we're trying to catch some sort of image, video footage of something, or photographic evidence or recordings of actually something. So yeah, we're trying hard, boots on the ground type of thing. And so yeah, we're up for going. I mean, we went up to just before Christmas, went to Filingdales. Paul saw some strange red thing that was. He walked up the track. Well, it's a small road that goes down to Gothland where the recorded heartbeat. He went there. When he was coming back, he was stood there on the hill on his own, and he saw something red through his Sightings camera, right in the distance across the top of all of us. That he couldn't explain what it was. And when he came to the group of us that was there, Martin Abbas was up there with us. He asked, and Martin says, "Well, I saw a red light," and he had done, and that was before Paul had told him that he'd seen a red light in the distance. It was an interesting night. It was bloody freezing up there. I mean, it was there was an hard frost on the ground, and it was nice, to meet other people that had come from that area to meet us up there. So yeah, moving about, yeah, we don't mind doing that, and I think we're maybe going to have to do, because the last few times up there, I don't know. Like I was saying earlier on, it's either there or it's not, and we'll all be there with our serious heads on, and then someone will mention something, then we're laughing and joking, and then we have the EMF meters set in the background, and the EMF meters just go silly, and it's like, what? Look at that, and everyone's tone just changes, and you're just watching the EMF meter, redlining, bouncing off the scale when it shouldn't be doing that at all.
So it's definitely tied into not necessarily the mood, but your behaviours, and certainly seems to be interested in or not in what you guys are doing.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you're just talking about sort of like normal everyday things, nothing seems to be to change. But I know we've said about dark humour, but I mean, we're not dark humour as in something like satanic or anything like that, because God forbid that ain't going to happen. But you'll mention something like, we'll say, well, I'll be blunt and I'll say it. I'll say it as it is. Jeremy's disappeared down there. Wouldn't it be funny if Jeremy comes back and his trousers have been ripped off, and he says, "Is encountered a dog man, not a dog woman, a dog man," and then the EMF just goes silly. You know what I mean? And we all know what we're talking about, and it's like, you know what I mean? What the bloody hell was that? And it's the EMFs are just going off the scale for something that's it shouldn't be doing. So it's adult male humour.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? What you get a reaction from, and sometimes it's complete accident. So it's one of them where I think you're doing the right thing. I think certainly now it's coming into spring. I'm looking forward to getting out a lot more, and it's certainly Jesus on that with that North Sea. It's definitely easier as it gets milder. I know people keep saying, "Oh, you must be mad," but seriously, guys, if you haven't been there and felt that cold, it gets in your bones, doesn't it? You can have 5-6 layers on, bloody immersion suits, you name it.
Yeah, I mean,
you get home, you think you're all right, don't you? You think you're warm, and then you'll sit in, and you've been in the house maybe an hour or two, and it's still in your bones, that chill.
You've hit the nail right on the head there. I mean, I have this, Apollo man got me, it's a freezer jacket, what people used to use in blast freezers. So it's waterproof as well. So I quite often wear that a great big red thing with visitor written on the back. And you feel, I mean, you're a bit chilly. It's usually your feet and your extremities. If you've been holding a camera thermal up in your hand, so your hands, I don't like wearing gloves, and your hands feel it, and you don't feel too bad. And you get in the car, you put the heated seats on, then you get home, and then you get your kit off, and your legs and your back, you're freezing.
Yeah, it's weird.
You're
Isn't it?
absolutely. I mean, my wife says, "Well, you bugger off back to your side of bed. You're freezing." And it's really, we should sort of like, you should get home and get in the bath and warm yourself up. But but you do it. It gets under your skin. I was going to say to Mick earlier on, because I know Mick's out and about, and I mean, it's an old saying, the boots on the ground. He's out and about a lot, but it gets under your skin, and it like now. I know Paul's gone up there tonight, and I feel like I should really go up there and be up there with him. Yeah, he's up there with his daughter and a boyfriend and all the rest of it, and whoever else is going to go up there with his family. But you feel like you're missing out. That's how I feel. Is like, you turn up an hour or so late. Has anything happened? Have you seen anything? Well, when it has, you're sort of like a bit envious that you haven't been there to experience it. And then you feel, well, I feel if I don't go up there, I feel guilty that I haven't been there. Is it sort of like it's an expected thing that you know what I mean? It's hard to explain it. It's like an hobby, but it's not an hobby.
Yeah, but it's not only that though. You want to get out though, don't you? You want to be out there and be experiencing things. And there's not really a disappointment if nothing's happened, because you've been out there actually looking.
Yeah.
And I know what you mean by the cold, because I felt it. It is almost as though it's in your bones rather than your skin. You feel it really deep down in your body.
Well, spring is all I can say.
Well, yeah, I know. I understand what you say, but when you can be up there and it'll be 11:15 on a night time in like summertime, and it's still not really. You can. There isn't a moon out, but you can still see. It's not really dark, and then there's up to like 9 o'clock, 9:15. There's still lots of bird watchers and people poking about. Yeah, they're doing their own thing, and we're doing our thing. But it's, for me, I mean, it does spoil it. Wintertime does seem to be, it's dark at 4:15, and you do seem to see more, because by the time you get up there, it's absolutely proper pitch black. But yeah, summertime. But even last year, I still had a coat on, because it is absolutely. I mean, we moved last week. I think it was the Monday. We walked a little bit further down the cliff, and then just on that maybe 300-meter walk, the wind really got up, and it was you can feel the temperature drop, 2 or 3, 4 degrees or whatever in no time, and then it's absolutely freezing. But you're still there, and we still do it. And the amount of times that we say to each other, we must be mad. Are we mad? Why are we here? You walk up there and it's starting to spit, and it's like, well, what we're going to do? Well, let's give it half an hour, shall we? And let's hope that the rain disappears. And some of the times it does, and some of the times it don't. But the amount of times that someone will say, well, it's just starting to spit. What do you reckon? Yeah, go on then. So we all start to go, and then when we get to the car park, it's absolutely throwing it down. And then you're driving home, and it's teaming it down, and you think, we called that one, right? Yeah. And then other times, I mean, Paul's got quite a lot of footage, which I'm going to ask it. I mean, I have asked him before, but I think he should put it up. Really, we've had footage when it's been really heavy frost up there. It's been snow up there, and on one occasion was stood on the top stand, and every time he went towards this, like right on the edge where the stand is towards the sea, it was raining. I was getting wet. And then he stood back, and it won.
Yeah, it's weird like that, isn't it?
what the bloody hell's going on there? So I turned my torch on, and it was the sea. I mean, it's 300-400 feet down. It was the waves and the sea, and the wind was that heavy that it was blowing the seawater up the front of the cliff, and it was upside down rain. So when you had the torch on, the rain, well, it wasn't the rain, it was the sea flying up into the air off the cliffs, and only wet in that localized area. And it was, so Paul's filming. It was really, really odd to see, and really strange to see. Was that?
Yeah, it's a very unique place. Let's say that. So anyway, it's 9:10, so I'm gonna call this and thank you two. Yeah, it's 9:10. Yeah, so thanks so much for coming on, you two. Really appreciate it. And as usual, it's been great chatting and throwing ideas about, and it's what we do, I suppose, and we'll do it again soon. So, and everyone that's been tuned in tonight, again, as usual, we really appreciate your support. Any super chats, again, as usual, we really appreciate that too. So we will see you next week. We have got a guest on next week. I think it's Martin Groves. I think that we've got on next week. Could be wrong, but I'm sure it is. So that'll be a good one. So we'll see you guys next week. See you. I'll see you soon, Lenny, and I'll see you tomorrow, Mick.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take care.
All right, guys. So see you later. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you later.
Take care, everybody.